What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Tech Guru Podcast. My name is Frick, the Tech Guru. I'm so excited to be with you. This is the very first episode of this podcast. I have been trying to get this going for a really long time now, and here it is. I've recorded this episode probably about 20 times, but you know what? I'm just going to go with it and see how it turns out and take it from there. But before I get started, I want to thank a couple sponsors, alpha1studios.com, video production and DJ services. So if you need a DJ for a corporate event, Christmas party, staff party, or especially a wedding, check out alpha1studios.com, or you can look them up on Facebook, Alpha1 Studios. I also want to thank Jessica Irvin, who is an independent Norwex sales consultant. Norwex specializes in fast, easy to use, safe products. None of their products contain any chemicals. They're for cleaning your house or your car. So, excuse me, check out Jessica Irvin's Facebook page. She has her whole catalog on there, as well as some information about upcoming events if you want to get your hands on some of this merchandise. So again, thank you to those sponsors, and thank you again to all of you for tuning in. So, where do I begin? I guess I should start off by explaining how I got the name Frick. It is not my real name. My real name is Chris. When I was little, when I was about 1 year old, I was told that I couldn't say my own name. I couldn't say Christopher, so I said Frick, and it stuck within my family. As I got a little older, my cousin and I had the same circle of friends, so they all call me Frick, and it stuck with me ever since. But so that's how I go. That's what I go by. So that's how I got the name Frick, just so that you all understand that right off the bat, because it's one of the number one questions that I get. The point of this whole first episode is to kind of just give a background on myself, my involvement in the tech community, my experience with different tech gadgets, things like that. I'm going to tell you a story about YouTube and the power of social media, and why I really wanted to start this podcast. I will also, at the end of the show, tackle a poll that I had on my Facebook page, where I asked users to vote on which phone system they prefer, either Android or Apple. So I'll get to that at the end. So when I was little, I was always interested in technology. Ever since I could stand, I was playing with my dad's stereo or my aunt's record player. I used to sit there for hours, and I was just amazed at how they worked. And it just stuck with me for my whole life. I've worked for Rogers. I've worked for Bell. I've been call center agents for them. Both on the sales team and from the tech support side. When I was about 15 years old, I started DJing. As I mentioned, my company, Alpha1 Studios, that's my company. I just turned it into a company about 4 or 5 years ago, but I've been DJing for the last 18 years. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I'm blessed to have to be able to make a side gig out of it. I do very well as a DJ. As summer gets closer, I'm DJing about every weekend for weddings. So I'm thankful to all my clients as well. So I've been doing that for a really long time. I've had a YouTube channel for about 10 years. I'm not really active on YouTube as much as I should be. I'll tell you a little bit of story about YouTube later. And in 2010, I was hired by Costco to open their electronics section and work on the sales floor. And one of the compliments I always used to get on the sales floor was that I was able to explain difficult technological things with TVs and computers and laptops. I was able to simplify it and explain it to regular consumers so that they could make a better informed decision. And so that's kind of what I want to do with this podcast. I don't want it to be another tech show that's geared towards techies or nerds or whatever you want to call them. I want it to be the tech show for everybody, and I want everybody to understand what I'm saying, and things that are going on in the tech world, I want to explain them in such a way that you will be an expert by the end of the episode. I don't work in the electronics section anymore at Costco. I work in the office in human resources and payroll. So that's what I do now is my full-time job. Like I say, I DJ on the weekends. I also handle my father-in-law's website. He owns a tool manufacturing business. He manufactures his own tools, and he sells them online. So I help him with the website. I film him using those tools, and I put them on YouTube. He's very successful in the tool world. His name is Rob Cosman, robcosman.com if you want to check that out. So I handle that aspect of the business. So I keep really busy. I just wanted to do this podcast on the top because about, 7-8 years ago, Todd Vino, who was the host of the News 88.9 afternoon talk show. News 88.9 is a local radio station here in St. John, New Brunswick, in Canada, for those of you who are listening outside of Canada. So I was a frequent guest on the Todd Vino show. He would have me on to take calls. People would ask basic questions about technology. Maybe they were wondering what kind of gadget gift they should get for their significant other for Christmas, simple questions like that. And I absolutely loved being on that show. When News 88.9 was sold, it was taken off the air, and Todd started his own podcast, and I was a frequent guest on there, answering questions about what was going on in the tech world, whether it related to things going on in the political realm or just, new stuff coming out. And again, I was a frequent guest on that, and I absolutely love that. But recently, Todd had announced that he's chosen a new career path. He's stopping the podcast. So I decided that I would just do a spin-off of my kind of my segment that was on the Todd Vino show. And that's where I got the name, The Tech Guru. He gave it to me. So that's where it stuck, and that's how I got that name, and that's why I'm doing this podcast, because I wanted to keep that segment going that I did on Todd's show, and I'm appreciative to Todd for the times that he had me on the show. So let me just start off with a quick story. Now, if you listen to me on the Todd Vino show, I told this story on there, and it was probably my most listened to segment on his show, but I'm gonna retell the story just for those of you who may not have heard it before. So this story talks about the power of social media. And as you know, social media is outlets such as Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. But I want to focus on YouTube because I do believe YouTube is a form of social media. It's a way that anybody can share basically anything with the world. And one thing I like to do is I buy a lot of gadgets. And one thing I like to do is on YouTube, I check out reviews before I buy something. I like to know what other people think of it and make an informed decision based on that. One product came out that didn't have a YouTube video out for it yet. It was called the Nvidia Shield. And what it was a top-of-the-line Android box. And an Android box is just a simple thing that you plug into your TV that allows you to stream content from the internet directly to your TV. A lot of people are actually buying these now and canceling their cable subscriptions because they're able to stream pretty much anything that they want off of the internet directly to their TV without downloading anything. It's actually really convenient. But this was about 4 or 5 years ago, and Android boxes weren't as popular as they are now, but this one was the top of the line at the time. So I bought it. It was about $250, and I got it in the mail, and I decided that I would do a video about it. And it was a really ghetto video. I did it with my cell phone in one hand and the remote for the device in the other. And again, it was very low quality, but it went viral, and what I mean by viral in that realm, it had a couple 100,000 views. It wasn't popular like the Keyboard Cat or anything like that, but that's a lot of views for a product review. And I ended up, as you may know, you can get money from ads on your YouTube videos. So I ended up making about $950 to $1,000 on that one video alone. So the product actually paid for itself a couple times over. So I decided that I would keep doing that, keep reviewing products. I bought a lot of gadgets anyway, so I was just going to keep reviewing them as I got them. And one thing I like to do is I like to film the whole process. What that means is I would film myself getting it in the mail, taking it out of the whatever package it was in that it was mailed in, unboxing it for the first time, showing everybody what was in the box with the product, and then plugging it in and showing you how it worked. So I ordered a product from a company called GearBest. Now, GearBest is a huge Chinese distributor. If you're familiar with sites like Deal Extreme or AliExpress, GearBest is right up there with sites like that. And so I ordered another Android box. Now, this was a very cheap Android box. It was $30. Not a huge deal, but I wanted to see how it worked. I wanted to see how a $30 Android box worked. So I ordered the Android box, and it took about, stuff when you order directly from China, it could take over a month to get there, and it did take a while, but I expected that. When it got to me, I was filming the whole process, so I took it out of the mail, and I had my little knife, and I was cutting it open, and I was filming the whole thing, and when I opened the box, it was empty, and it had the plug in it, actually. It had the plug in the HDMI cord, but the actual Android box was missing, and I had it all on film. So what I did was I emailed Deal Extreme, and I told them what happened. I said, hey, listen, I got the package, but there was nothing in it. and they didn't actually believe me. And I told them that I actually had it on video. But again, they didn't believe me. And I said, you know what, listen, I just want my money back, or I want you to send me another product. If you don't, then I'm going to release the video. And they didn't seem to believe that I actually had it on video. Like, what were the odds that this one guy who didn't receive his package, what are the odds that he would be filming at the time? But I was. And of course, they didn't want to do anything for me. They did not want to, they didn't want to give me my money back. They didn't want to send me another product. So I released a video, and I released it under the header. The title of the YouTube video was "Do Not Buy from GearBest.com." And again, it went very, very popular. Again, it got over 100,000 views probably within the first couple weeks. And it got so popular that if you Googled GearBest, or if you typed GearBest in the search bar, it would show their website #1, and then right underneath it, it would show my video. So if you were looking for GearBest, it would say GearBest.com, and then right underneath it would say "Do Not Buy from GearBest.com," which was my video. And as I mentioned, it got very, very popular. A ton of people commented on the video. Some were haters, of course. They said that the video was fake, that I wrapped it up myself, and that I was just trying to get attention, which was certainly not the case. And but a lot of people were actually agreeing with me. A lot of people were sharing their stories about how they got scammed by the same company. So the video was on there for a little while, and eventually the president of the entire company of GearBest sent me a personal email, and he said, what do I got to do to make you take down the video? And at the time he offered me like $100. And again, the ad revenue that I was receiving off this one video was actually much higher than that. I was earning about $120 a month off this one video, so I was happy to keep it up. And so he was sending me a whole bunch of offers. I declined them, and I just kind of let it go. Now, it was not my intention to kind of take down this company. I mean, it's a $30 Android box. It's not a huge deal to me. But it was the fact that they weren't really displaying any customer service. And as we know, that's very important in today's society with the power of social media. So they kept making offers to me. I did not accept any of them at the time, and some time went on. And I'm huge into phones, and after some time passed, there was a new phone coming out. It was from a company called Xiaomi, which is exclusive to China. And it was called the Xiaomi Me Mix. It was the first totally bezel-less phone. Now, bezel-less phones are actually quite common now. If you look at a phone like the iPhone X or the new Samsung Galaxies, the screen takes up almost the entire front of the phone. And this was a couple years ago, so it was the very first phone to do that. And I really, really wanted it. It was a really nice phone. And it was worth over $900 US. And I really wanted it, but it was not coming to North America at all. It was going to stay in China. So I heard that GearBest, along with one other Chinese distributor, was going to be the only people that were going to be able to that was going to sell this phone. So I emailed the president back, and this was after a couple months, and I said, you know what, you give me first dibs. I wasn't even asking for the phone. I said, you give me first dibs on pre-ordering this phone, because I knew stock was limited. They're not a huge phone company. At least not over here. Like I say, they're just exclusive to China. I say, you give me first dibs on ordering the phone, and I will take down the video. At this time, the video wasn't making me as much money as it did before. As with most YouTube videos, they kind of fizzle out, and they become less and less popular. So I was making less money, but I was still the #2 hit on Google when you looked up their website. So that's why he wanted me off there. So I said, you know what? Let me order the phone first. Give me first dibs, and I will take the video down. Not 45 minutes later, he emailed me, and he said, you know what, the phone's on the way, don't worry about it. So I've never seen a package come that quickly from China. It was here within a week. Again, usually packages from China take over a month to get to you. And I had the phone in my hands, and so I did obviously live up to my end of the bargain, which was to take down the video, which I did, which is another reason why you can't find it today if you're looking for it. So the reason I tell that story is because the power of social media is so huge. I mean, I have no real following on YouTube. I have over 1,000 subscribers, which is certainly not a lot. But by one simple video, I made a huge impact on a company. Like I said, it wasn't my intention to bring them down or anything like that, but just one video can severely, put a business, make a business aware rather. And we see it all the time on Facebook when people have a bad experience with a restaurant or a store. They're going to tell people about it, and then those people are going to share it. And 9 times out of 10, when somebody sees a post like that, without hearing the other side of the story, they're going to agree with it. And whoever's first to the table usually has that upper hand. And so, again, that's why I related that story about the power of social media, in this case, YouTube. But, again, we all know how it is with YouTube and with Facebook and Instagram and things like that. So that's my story about that. I thought it was a really cool story, again, because I'm just a small-time guy, but I made a big impact on that company. So I don't want to take too much more time. I want to get on to the poll on my Facebook page. I'm just going to find it here and read to you what I got for answers. So my question was, which do you prefer? And I could have just asked, which one do you use? Because you're probably using the one that you prefer, right? Do you prefer Apple or do you prefer Android? And first off, just so you guys have some background, if you're not familiar with this at all, and like I say, I want this podcast to be for everybody. I want you to understand what we're talking about. Apple is the brand that makes iPhones, and they make the operating system iOS, meaning the I operating system. Android is an operating system that is made by Google, and it is on many different phones. It is on Samsung phones, LG phones, brands called Huawei. Google has their own phone called the Google Pixel. It's on a ton of different phones. So you have the two major powerhouses. You have Apple and you have everything else basically that runs Android. So my question was, which one do you prefer? And the final conclusion to my poll was 60% of you preferred Apple and 40% of you preferred Android. And I had a total of 52 votes. So not a ton of votes, but definitely more than I was expecting. So thank you to those who voted. I'm just going to read some comments here. Jen says, I'm not sure if Apple is better. It is just what I'm used to. But I'm curious about the Google phone and if it will soon be in these discussions. So as I just mentioned, Google makes their own phone called the Pixel and the Pixel 2 XL. They do run Android because Android is made by Google. They actually run the cleanest version of Android, meaning sometimes when brands like Samsung or LG, they have Android, but then they put their own sort of twist on it. They add their own programs. Google does not do that. It's a pure form of Android, which a lot of techies like myself really like. So thank you, Jen, for that comment. Nicholas says, so I've had every single Galaxy series up to the S8, so for like a decade. However, I'm trying the iPhone X soon. Huge jump, I know. Biggest reason is Apple chose to finally make a better display. Can I justify the huge price tag? No. I hope this chance turns into more productivity. Liam, my cousin, says Android because they are so much less limiting. You can download an app for anything. And my LG has an infrared feature, so you can download a remote for any TV, cable box, stereo system, etc. It also has a removable battery, so I always have one charged. They just have great practical features you can use on a daily basis, and anyone who says Android cameras suck, mine is dual aperture with 16 megapixels, and you can also download torrents straight to your phone directly from the internet, which you can't do on an iPhone. Finally, Joseph says Samsung/Android has always been my favorite of mine. For me, the biggest thing has been the expandable memory and replaceable batteries. However, the newer Samsungs don't have the replacement battery anymore, but I still appreciate the expandable memory. So thank you to Joseph, Liam, Nicholas, and Jen for your comments, and for all 52 of you who voted on my poll. It kind of turned out like I expected it to. For the longest time, it was actually mostly Android. I think at one point it was like 83%, or not Android, sorry. It was around 83% iPhone, and then the Android users came out at the end and voted and brought it back up, but still iPhone won. Now, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the whole subject. And just to kind of give you an idea why I think I'm kind of qualified to do this is because I've had more phones than anybody that I know. I change my phone every about 3 to 4 months. And if you're asking or if you're wondering how that's possible, what I do is I buy my phones outright. So which means I pay the full price. I don't buy them on contract. I keep them in immaculate shape. I always use a case on the phone as well as a screen protector. I keep them in perfect shape, and then I'll sell them for 3 to 4 months later for a really high price, usually on eBay, sometimes on Kijiji if I feel like I can sell it on Kijiji a little faster. And then I buy the latest and greatest. I have to have the latest and greatest phones. I also think that I can talk about this subject because I've owned both iPhones and Android phones. I've owned probably in the last 5 years, I've owned probably 25 to 30 phones. Some of them Android, some of them iPhone, mostly Android, but I'll get to that. And another thing I did, which I forgot to mention earlier when I was talking about kind of some of my tech credentials, I taught a class at the local community college. It was called New Brunswick Community College. I taught a class there for their continuing education program. I taught 2 classes, actually. I taught one on Introduction to Mac Computers, and I also taught one on the Introduction to iPhone, iOS, and iPads. So I've done it from a teaching aspect. So some of the decisions that you're going to hear me make here in a couple seconds about various things came from that class specifically. But again, I've had both phones. I know, where the advantages are, and you can certainly take it from a grain of salt and with a grain of salt. And I certainly welcome your opinions on the matter as well. So you can comment on the video when you listen to this or what you think. But I'm going to go over some different categories because I'm going to tell you right off the bat, there's no clear-cut winner here. Apple is not the best at everything, and Android is not the best at everything. So I'm going to kind of break it down and tell you what each one does better, and of course, it's my opinion. So I'm going to start off, and this one comes from the class that I taught. Which one is easier to use? And this one, hands down, has got to be Apple. If people come to me and they have very little experience with smartphones, if they have very little experience with tablets, I'm going to recommend the iPhone or the iPad every single time. They're definitely easier to use. Android, I mean, not that Android's difficult. It's just that Androids can get a little more advanced. iPhone keeps everything simple, and it's had the pretty much the same layout for the last decade. Not much has changed. I mean, they've added more features, obviously, but it's the layout and everything. Just the little squares on the screen. You pick which app you want. That's all basically remain the same. Now, if we're looking at the phones themselves, which ones are nicer? I'm going to go with Android on this. Now, this comes from a number of reasons. First of all, when you buy an iPhone, it's made by Apple. Everything in it is Apple. The operating system is Apple. The phone itself is Apple. The parts inside of it are mostly Apple. There are some, they do some third-party sourcing for some of their parts, but it's mostly Apple. Everything about it is Apple. And Apple is just another word for expensive. Not that it doesn't represent quality as well, but Apple's products are known to be expensive. Apple only releases 1 or 2. Last year they released 3 different models of phone. Last year they released the iPhone 8, the iPhone 8 Plus, and the iPhone X. All of these phones are expensive. And that's the only choice you have. If you want to run iOS, those are the only phones that you can use if you want to run that software. Android, on the other hand, hundreds of phones are released every year that run Android. And the advantage to that is that you can pick a phone that's within your price range. So there are Android phones around $100 unlocked, like outright without a contract. And then there are phones that are over $1,000. My latest phone, I have the Samsung Galaxy S9 right now. And it cost me over $1,000. Again, I keep it in perfect shape. I'll probably sell it for $850, $900. But you can also get a phone if you want to, much cheaper. And of course, they're going to vary by speed, camera, a whole bunch of different specs on the inside that determine that price range. So keep that in mind as well. But you have far more selection when it comes to phones if you remain with Android. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is customization. And I'm not talking about the customization to the phone itself, like with cases or things like that, because if I was talking about that, Apple would win that. But I want to talk about customization of the phone, like the software. And that is Android, hands down. Android is what they call a lot more open, meaning that more people can develop for it, more people can make stuff for it, and that you can change. You can make Android tailored to you, is what I mean. And to dig into that a little further, it means that if you don't like the keyboard, you can download new keyboards. There's hundreds of different keyboards that you can download. If you don't like the theme, if you don't like the icons and the way things are laid out, you can change how they look as well. You can really tailor the experience around how you want it. Another thing that you can do that you can't do on iPhone is that you can put widgets right on your homepage. Now, what I mean by that is on iPhone, when you're scrolling through the homepage, your home screen there, it's just a whole bunch of different apps with little squares. You can put them in little groups, but that's pretty much it. On Android, you can add widgets. So you can add the weather, you can add your email, you can add your calendar right to the home screen without going into any apps, so you can see them all of the time. This is just another way that Android allows more customization and allows you to tailor it more towards yourself. The next thing I want to kind of tackle is messaging. Now, this is another topic where iPhone wins, and my sister, who is big into this, she loves iMessage, and it's the main reason that she sticks with iPhone. She calls anybody who sends her a text that shows up as a green bubble, meaning if you don't send a text message to an Apple user with an iPhone, or if you're not using an iPhone, it shows up as a green bubble instead of a blue bubble on your text messaging. She calls them poor bubbles because she assumes that Android phones are for poor people, apparently, but that's of course not the case. But iMessage is a great service. I have to give Apple props for that one because it works really well. It's a great program, and those people with iPhones certainly enjoy it. But going a little bit kind of leads into my next topic, which is voice assistants. Now, if you know, Apple phones have something called Siri, and I've seen people use Siri, and it's not great. It doesn't work. Android phones have what is known as the Google Assistant, and it's hands down much better than Siri. In fact, the only time I've seen Siri work is when it actually looks for something on Google. Other than that, it doesn't work that well. I mean, it tells some funny jokes, but if you're actually looking for information and you want it quick, the Google Assistant is much better than Siri is. And that you can see on many websites. If you ask, or if you look at, Apple versus Android on a number of different websites, they're going to tell you that the Google Assistant is much, much better than Siri. Let's talk about apps for a second. So the Google has their Play Store and Apple has the App Store, and those are the two platforms in which you can download new programs to your phone. An app is just simply a small program on your device, either an iPad or an iPhone or an Android tablet or an Android phone, that does a certain task. There are more apps in the Google Play Store, meaning there are more apps for Android, but quantity here doesn't necessarily mean quality. Apple has a lot of good apps. Android has a lot of good apps. But I'm still going to give this one to Android, and I'll tell you why. Liam kind of mentioned it in his comment that there are apps that are not available on iPhone. And the reason for that is iPhone screens a lot of the apps that come to their platform. So what that means is they only allow certain apps to get through, and they only allow certain apps to get downloaded on the App Store. And they usually do not let apps that are in competition to their own services. So for the longest time, they wouldn't allow Spotify. Spotify is a music streaming service. It competed directly with iTunes, so they wouldn't let it on. Eventually, they did. But there's other things for example, if I want to download videos from YouTube or if I want to download music from YouTube, I can do that easily on Android. If I want to download Kodi, which is the program I mentioned earlier that's on the Android boxes, if I want to download that to my phone, I can do it easily. It's just right there in the App Store. If I want to download torrents, as Liam mentioned, torrents are just ways to download music, movies, TV shows. I can do that right on my phone. I don't need any other devices, and it's all stuff that you can't do on an iPhone. So as far as apps go, I still give it to Google because they allow more stuff to get posted on their App Store, which means there's more options for you to do more things. Let's talk about updates next. And updates are huge in the technology world. Nothing stays static for very long in the tech world, as anybody knows, really. You've seen technology advance in your lifetime, I'm sure, by a whole bunch. So updates come out for phones, usually monthly, sometimes quarterly. And in this category, iPhone wins, because when an update comes out for iPhone, it gets released to all of their devices. And you can download it usually right away. Sometimes an update comes out and the very oldest iPhones or iDevices won't be able to take it. But for the most part, if an update comes out, you can download it on any phone at the same time. When a new version of Android comes out, it's up to the manufacturer of the phone. And not only that, but it's not even specific to the brand. So let's say a new version of Android comes out. Samsung might release it for their new phone. They might release it for the S9, but they might not release it for the S8 for another month. And it's the same with LG and all the other brands out there. Usually the Google Pixel phones are the first to get the updates, and then the other phones, they could be 6 months behind, 7 months behind. And that's a real pain, and that's a real problem for Android users. That's one of the things that they complain about most. So in the updates category, iPhone wins this one. Let's talk about security. This is another one, unfortunately, for the Android users where iPhone, I have to give it to iPhone. Because, and this goes back to the apps thing, because iPhone screens their apps a lot more for things that go through the App Store, you're less likely to have anything with a virus. You're less likely to have anything with spyware or malware. So in this case, iPhones are a lot more secure. They do have a better security system as far as their cloud service goes as well. I know there's been stories in the past where their cloud services have been hacked with celebrities and things like that, but they are still the most secure phones. If you care about that, I mean, not a lot of people honestly care about that too much. It's not going to sway their opinion one way or the other. It's not going to make their decision of which phone to get. So, but still, Apple with that one all the way. There's a couple things that I can compare, but you can't really give it to, and that's battery life and camera. If we simply compare the top of the line iPhone, meaning the iPhone X at this point, it's April 20th, 2018 right now. So as of right now, the top of the line iPhone is the iPhone X. The top of the line Android phones are the Samsung Galaxy S9 and the Google Pixel 2 XL. If you're to compare those ones, apples to apples, the Android phones are going to win because the new Samsung phone and the new Google Pixel have extremely good battery lives, and they also have insanely good cameras. Not to say that iPhone X does not have a great camera, which it does, but the but the Samsung Galaxy S9 and the Google Pixel 2 XL do have better cameras at the moment, in my opinion. I've seen tests. I've used all of them, and I prefer right now. Actually, I prefer my camera on the Galaxy S9 the most. So those are just the things I want to tackle as far as comparing the two. As I mentioned before I started the comparison, there is no clear-cut winner. I'm not going to tell you to go out and buy one or the other. If you're used to Apple, stick with Apple. There's certainly nothing wrong with it. If you have a Mac computer and an iPad at home, definitely stick with the iPhone. If you're used to using like a Windows computer and you have an Android tablet, then I would stick with Android. It's just easier to keep everything in sync between all your devices. So that's what I want to tackle on this episode. Again, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for my sponsors. If you want to sponsor the show, you can contribute through PayPal or Patreon, or I don't mind giving local shout-outs, free sponsorship. If you want to be mentioned on the next episode of my podcast, certainly just send me a message, and I will do that for free, as I mentioned, for the first couple episodes. Then I'll start looking for sponsors, maybe depending on how big this thing gets. I'll start looking for paid sponsors. But that's the episode and the things I wanted to share with you today. Next week, I want to talk about driverless cars. I'm huge into cars. I love cars. I'm going to tell you a story about Tesla next week. They have a feature on their cars that allows the car to drive itself, basically. It's not fully driverless, but there was a news article recently where a transport truck recently completed its first driverless test. It made a delivery driverless. So we're going to talk about that. I want to hear your opinions on it. I want to know if you think it's a good idea. If it's something that you would support, or if you always want to have the human aspect of decision making behind the wheel. Let me know what you think. Ask me any question you want. I'd love to tackle your simple questions on the next episode, and I certainly appreciate your feedback. But thanks again so much for tuning in. You guys have a great day.